Coming at you today with a bit of a mental health marathon. This is going to be a bit of a longer form video where I talk about 5 mental health topics that I've been thinking a lot about recently, namely sleep, stress, procrastination, social isolation, and 5 mood boosting tips. These are all super related ideas, and I've found that as I've paid more attention to each of them in turn, there's just generally a little bit less friction in my life, and so I really think that getting them dialed in is a real game changer. It's a bit of a beast of a video, so I'll put timestamps to the specific topics down below, and I'll include links to the specific videos as well. Please enjoy, hit like if you're so inclined, and let me know in a comment what you think of this format. Bye!
Hi, you hairy woman.
Hi y'all! Today I want to talk about something that is equal parts surprising and also important. How lonely so many of us are, and the measurable negative effects that feelings of loneliness and isolation have on our health. That sounds really gloomy, because it is, but I'm going to share some concrete calls to action that research suggests can make a real difference, as well as some of my own thoughts and ideas that are totally not backed up by science, in the slightest. But might be worth considering too. Let's get to it. 50% of American adults report feelings of loneliness. That's huge. Let's do some really bad math for a second. Let's think of yourself and your favorite person that you have feelings of fondness for. Between the two of you, one is probably lonely. It's a coin flip, right? If you are ever lonely, Jonathan Bailey, please know that I am here for you and you can always reach out. Okay, so I think that my math PhD may have just burst into flames at that egregious misuse of probability, but today I'm calculating with my heart, not with my head. I'll say more about this later, but I really want more social connection on platforms like YouTube. So to that end, please, I implore you, if you want to connect with me or with others, please consider dropping a comment down below. If you post videos, I will check them out. If you don't, direct me to your main social media accounts and I'll reach out there. While you're there, take a look at who else has posted and get a conversation going. I really mean it. I will be so sad if I am the only person in the comments with no one to talk to. Anyway, so survey says loneliness is prevalent. Maybe that just kind of sucks and hopefully doesn't have any long-lasting negative impacts. Unfortunately, it turns out that's just wishful thinking. The then Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, put out this advisory in 2023 talking about the consequences of this chronic loneliness. The findings are pretty grim. An estimated 80% of young adults, that's ages 18 to 24, report feeling lonely at least some of the time. And the impact is huge. The risk of premature death due to a lack of social connection is comparable to smoking 15 cigarettes a day and surpasses the risk due to classic health conditions like obesity and a lack of exercise. Poor social relationships also increase the risk of heart disease by 29%, of stroke by 32%, and of dementia by 50%. What's more, it can actually damage your immune system and make you more susceptible to infections and disease. Which make me do a bit of a double take, right? Because usually when I feel like I want to avoid coming down with something, I tend to avoid people and isolate myself. Somewhat ironically, chronically isolating yourself weakens your immune system and makes you more susceptible. This all sounds like pretty bad news. So what can we do for ourselves and for others? Certainly take stock of your existing social connections and see if any of those relationships need any TLC, either on your end or on the other person's. Beyond that, take a chance on some new social activities out in the community, both to broaden your circle of social contact, but also to help rebuild the social fabric of our towns and cities that so many people report feeling is in a state of disrepair. Which brings us to social media. It's one of the big paradoxes of the modern age that in a time where technology allows us to be more connected than ever before in our history, people report feeling more disconnected than ever before. Here's my take. Yes, nowadays, communication with anyone, anywhere is basically at your fingertips 24/7. But how often do you actually get around to using this fantastic new technology to stay in touch with people? I could FaceTime with my mum every day. I do not. Sorry, Mum. It's like living in the same city as a really cool tourist attraction like the Louvre, but never actually making it along to see any of the exhibits. It seems so convenient and something that you could totally do whenever, but the ease and possibility of it somehow makes it all the more easy to put off doing. So how can we live more like tourists in our own digital lives? Well, I say we should start leveraging this novel digital medium to start driving connection in new ways. Start a conversation with me in the comments like I mentioned earlier, or start talking to strangers on Threads or Blue Sky about something you're passionate about or something you have absolutely no idea about. Make a new YouTube channel and just start talking into the void. It's what I did 16 years ago. And what I started back up doing earlier this month. I have lots of genuine connections with people on YouTube that I loved back in the day, and I've really been enjoying reaching back out to these people and having people reach back out to me. But there's also something that makes me so happy to right now be speaking into this camera and knowing that someone might see this and have it spark something in them or in me or something in between. Yes, loneliness is a killer. Thinking about it, I really don't think that should be that surprising. Yes, the specific numbers are horrifying, but we're a society of people who are ultimately always yearning for connection, whether we realize it or not. In an age where we can solve really complex problems using things like science, medicine, engineering, art, music, literature, philosophy, let's commit to solving an older, simpler one. What's it like to be me where I am? And what's it like to be you where you are? What is the same about us? And what's different? Is the dress blue and black, or is it white and gold? Are you Team Yanni or Team Laurel? With all the ways that we have of putting ourselves out there nowadays, can I reach a hand of friendship out into the void and have someone else offer one in return? Is the dress blue and gold, or is it white and black? Neither.
Do you know a good lawyer? I promise I'm not in trouble or anything. What about a doctor or a finance guy or gal? You maybe do, right? Know at least one? I only ask because today happens to be Saturday, and for people in those high-stress careers, sometimes the weekend isn't necessarily a day off, even if looking at their work schedule it's technically supposed to be. The pressure and stress of these and similar jobs can be crushing. So on this official day of rest, I want to talk to you about burnout at work. What causes it, how to spot it, its dangers, and some actionable steps you can take to help any loved ones you think might be struggling with it. Or yourself, if you're impacted. My husband was a lawyer for almost 5 years, so I've seen up close the effect of a seemingly relentless work environment. Burnout tends to happen when a worker is repeatedly faced with long work hours, high expectations, and tight deadlines. Those are bad enough, but when they're also coupled with limited autonomy over your work schedule, your projects, or even your downtime, it's a really bad combo. Burnout looks different from person to person and across different fields, but there are some common warning signs that you can look out for, like constant exhaustion, trouble focusing, lost motivation, and becoming more cynical or emotionally detached. Burnout isn't just feeling tired at the end of a long week. It runs a lot deeper than that and has some really serious knock-on effects. Generally, your productivity tanks and your physical and mental health both take a nosedive. Think irritability, anxiety, hopelessness, depression. Often your close relationships start to suffer with feelings of resentment coming into sharp focus. And it's not just lawyers, doctors, or finance professionals that are at risk. Burnout is rampant in other high-stress careers too. Think academics, teachers, first responders, and high-stakes corporate roles. I was a postdoc at university for several years, and I saw up close the damage that the publish or perish culture has on many academics, where the pressure to produce new, novel, groundbreaking work never lets up. I was also a high school teacher for several years, which is definitely a profession with high rates of burnout. Too often, teachers are expected to handle overcrowded classrooms, bureaucratic red tape, and offer emotional support to their students without enough school resources. And for first responders, like police officers, paramedics, firefighters, which I have no personal experience, the combination of high-stress situations, long hours, and ultimately traumatic experiences can be really overwhelming. And unfortunately, studies suggest that in these careers we've been talking about, burnout is shockingly common. Anywhere from 30 to 50% of workers in these professions report feeling burned out at some point in their careers. So what can you do if you're spotting some red flags of burnout in a loved one or in yourself? Well, here are some actionable steps you can take. Gently encourage stricter work-life boundaries, whether that be taking more breaks, actually using vacation days, or committing to not checking email outside of work unless absolutely necessary. Re-evaluate the workload and delegate out what can be, and potentially have a conversation with a manager about bandwidth. Prioritize rest and stress management. Check if the worker's getting enough sleep, they're getting good exercise, and potentially consider seeking therapy if that would help. If you suspect that a loved one is struggling to cope, one of the best things that you can do is offer emotional validation. Stress at work can feel very isolating, and it can really help to know that somebody you care about understands. There are more drastic changes that can be made too. You can reassess if the career path that you're on is actually for you. My husband still has a fantastic job, he's just no longer a lawyer. he has better work-life balance, and is on the whole a lot healthier and happier. If the nuclear option of switching careers isn't an option, you could try negotiating a new work arrangement, whether that's remote work or a hybrid schedule, or negotiating for mental health days being baked into your schedule. If you're really suffering, you could also take an extended break from your career. Think a sabbatical or extended leave. Depending on your profession or your particular role, this might be easier or harder to achieve, but some industries and companies have support programs designed for just this sort of thing. Ultimately, the bottom line is burnout isn't a badge of honor, it's a warning sign. If you or someone close to you is struggling, take it seriously. Protecting your well-being isn't selfish, it's necessary, and it can save a life. Seriously, if you're struggling with stress at work or burnout, please reach out to me, to someone else in your life, to someone online. There are lots of resources out there that can help, and it's not something you have to struggle through alone. Things can and should be better. Hey y'all. So this morning I woke up feeling a little bit low energy and I didn't really know what to do. But then I realized I did know what to do. So I wanted to share some of the strategies that I typically run through on days where I wake up and maybe am in the best mood. I want to feel better in myself. And I know that I have some tools, some practices that will get me feeling more even keel, more ready to take on the day. So I wanted to share just in case you're ever in a similar situation, because these tips really help me get moving on days when, if I'm left to my own devices, I might just not. So the first thing that I always check in with and try to dial in better is my sleep. Hey, so I was just about to post this and I realized that I kind of buried the lead. Tip 4 is definitely the most fun one because I tell you to eat a cupcake. So just in case you weren't going to make it there, I would consider skipping ahead. It's at about the 7-minute mark. Enjoy the cupcake and hopefully the video. Now, ideally, I've had a great night's sleep the night before, if I know I have a big day coming up, but more often than not, maybe the wheels have already come off my sleep the night before and I need to course correct. In fact, if I wake up feeling tired, sluggish, that's usually a good sign that it's going to be one of those days and I need to break out some of these best practices. So, best case scenario is I've had a great night of sleep. I don't overthink this, okay? I just want to be in a dark, cold-ish room, head on pillow for 8-ish hours. I used to track my sleep pretty closely using lots of trackers and alarm clocks. Those of you who know me or have been watching recent videos will know I'm pretty anti that these days. Especially sleep being one of those things where it's really easy to get anxiety about sleep. At least if you're me or me adjacent. I feel like anxiety is like anathema to sleep. It's going to stop you from getting a good night's sleep if you get too worried about it. So if you're someone who does struggle to sleep or have issues with insomnia, I am not a sleep expert. Do it every night, but I'm not a sleep expert. And I know the pain of being underslept. If you are in that boat, please reach out to me in the comments. Lots of great resources online. You don't need to be struggling with insomnia alone. There are some really interesting treatment approaches nowadays, which you may be aware of, you may not. Either way, don't suffer in silence. If I've not had a great night's sleep, maybe I did my best and I still couldn't get well rested, or maybe I stayed up too late, having too much fun, doing whatever. It would seriously mean so much to me right now if you hit liked. Liked? Either way, I'm waking up the next day feeling a bit sluggish. What can I do? Well, I can certainly try to have a nap. I don't like to rely on stimulants too much because that's a bit of a slippery slope and ultimately they don't really work for me that well. Anyway, I think caffeine is a bit of a placebo effect, at least on me. But if a nap isn't quite cutting it or I don't have time, I might do something like a yoga nidra practice or non-sleep deep rest protocol. I'll link to some of these in the video description. There are lots of free ones on YouTube. It's ultimately a really specific kind of guided meditation about being highly focused on certain parts of your body and your mind, and it can be really recharging. Science seems to suggest it can be at least as restorative for you as a nap. That can feel a little bit more proactive, productive than just saying, I'm tired, I'm gonna crawl back into bed. Speaking of yoga nidra, non-sleep deep rest, strategy number 2 is some kind of mindfulness practice. Now, this can be a traditional meditation, either again using a free resource on YouTube or one of the well-known meditation apps out there, or if you have experience, you can just sit quietly in a chair, do your own thing. But it can also be something a little more novel, like yoga nidra, non-sleep deep rest, or you can try different forms of breath work. Now, I have in the past tracked my breath work practice. Again, don't recommend it. You don't need to track how much and how well you breathe. Probably. I mean, definitely make sure you're breathing enough and well, but it doesn't need to be logged in your health app. It can be logged in your lungs
Your lungs are going to do a good job of tracking that for you. And continuing the theme of having anxiety about things that are made worse by having anxiety, breathwork for me can be really helpful, but not if I'm too in my head about, am I doing this correctly? Right, maybe you know some of the popular breathwork practices out there nowadays, like box breathing, or the physiological sigh, or 4-7-8 breathing. Regardless, these are all really specific ways of breathing for an extended period of time, meant to relax you, or focus you, or have some specific physiological change happen to you, hopefully for the better. So for example, with the physiological sigh, you are supposed to do a really deep breath through your nose, and then at the top of that breath, do one more tiny inhale through your nose again. Really just make sure your lungs are fully inflated. I don't know why I'm pretending that I've got my breath held. I don't. So you do the breath, and you breathe one time at the top, and then you breathe out really slowly through your mouth until your lungs are empty. And then you repeat that process for like 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And what I find happens when I do that is my fingers start to tingle and I start to get lightheaded. And so I think that is not making me feel super relaxed, and it's making me think, do I know how to breathe? Am I breathing correctly? And then I would be tracking it in an app, and then I would look at how it judged my breathing protocol, and it would be, you're stressed, which is not what you want to hear after you've just done 5 minutes of deep breathing, trying to relax yourself, trying to get into a good headspace, and then an app tells you that you've done it badly and that you're stressed. So breathwork can work. I like something like box breathing, where the breathing pattern is you breathe in, you hold, you breathe out, you hold. Hard to overthink. You can attenuate it faster or slower depending on how you're feeling. You can fine tune the sort of rhythm of your breathing. Typically, I like to do a silent meditation. Tried a lot of different apps over the years. Typically, I will now just focus on my breathing, listen to my surroundings, check in, do some sort of body scan, especially if I feel like the day is getting away from me. Tip 3, devices. You can't escape them nowadays, and nor would you want to. They're useful, they're practical, they help us engage with the world. But they're also really pretty awful sometimes. They're designed to keep us coming back to them engaged, distracted. Either it's a work day and I potentially feel distracted by the pull of my phone to check something, and I'm not focused as well as I could be on work tasks, or it's the weekend or the evening and I'm trying to unwind, connect with my partner, with my family, with my friends, and again, I'm feeling the pull elsewhere to check my phone and allow myself to get distracted by an app, by a post, by a thread, by a video. It leaves me not feeling necessarily that great. So to really get my mood into great shape, especially if I'm needing to focus on something, I will create a device-free bubble. I will put my phone in a drawer in another room and try my best not to think about it. If it's just on Do Not Disturb, turned face down on my desk, that's doing absolutely nothing. I feel that constant draw to reach for it and check. There's always an app that I can open up and pull down the little slot machine spinner and see if anything refreshes to give me a little hit of fake dopamine. And that's not what I want, but I'm trying to focus on something important elsewhere. So, by no means a groundbreaking technique, but getting yourself far away from your devices, intentionally setting up a space where they're not there to distract you, almost immediately gets me feeling better. Tip number 4, and this is a really fun one, allow yourself a guilt-free indulgence. And this can be food, but it does not need to be. It needs to be something which typically you would enjoy, but you would tinge with guilt. So maybe it is scrolling on your phone, but allowing yourself to do that guilt-free for an amount of time, get the goodness, the nourishment from this activity without the associated guilt that you would normally have hanging there in the background. Watch the trashy TV show. Gossip with your friend about your other friend. Eat the cupcake and then finish the box. Okay, maybe don't finish the box, right? It's not, for me, really about the indulgence. It's great, sure, to do something indulgent. For me, it's taking that moment to just go easy on yourself and don't pile on that guilt, that negativity. Number 5, and the last tip I have for you today, is to get outside into the real world, right? Into nature, assuming that conditions are safe.
Get out there, get moving. It doesn't need to be about exercise. For me, it needs to be about fresh air. Feel the wind, the rain, the sunshine, hopefully, if that's your thing. I'm Scottish, it can't be my thing. See the stars, try to decide if that's Mars or Venus or just an airplane. Get out into the world and experience the day as it actually is. Not whatever your thermostat happens to be set to inside. There are lots of studies out there about the benefits of being out in nature, but I'm not doing it for the official, supposedly proven benefits. I'm doing it because I enjoy it. We are meant to, ultimately, on some level, be outside. Yes, shelter is important and helps us survive, but there are so many great things about being out in the world that our bodies need to thrive. To close the circle, right, if I wake up in the morning and I feel tired and sluggish, I know I haven't necessarily had the best night of sleep. The first thing I do isn't take a nap, look up a non-sleep deep rest protocol, or have a cupcake. Admittedly, I do try to not immediately grab for my phone, but the first thing that I do is try and get outside. Get some sunlight, get some fresh air, breathe in, do a little stretch, then get going. So that's it. Those 5 things really work for me. What about you? What's your first port of call when you're not having the best day and you want to give yourself a little pick-me-up? Is it one of these 5 things? Is it something else? I would love to hear from you. I'm all about adding a new tool to my toolkit. Making this video today has helped me feel a lot more part of the world, so thank you for your part in that. I hope it's helped you if you are struggling today too. And with that, I'll just say, see you next time. It's too hot! Here's a riddle. What's the one thing as a human that to do it, you pretend to do it? It's not speaking French. It's sleeping. And that's really frustrating, that the only thing it says in the instructions manual is sleep, do it. If you found your way to this video, it's probably because you struggle with sleep issues, whether you have in the past or you're dealing with an episode right now. I have been there and it sucks. I don't want to waste your time, so let's dive right into it. One opinion I have that might be kind of unpopular is a lot of the sleep hacks out there meant to beat insomnia actually are kind of unimpressive and ineffective. The common advice is set a sleep schedule. Make sure your room is dark. Make sure your room is cold enough. Make sure that there's minimal noise. Consider using a sleep mask. Maybe use a sleep tracker. The thing is, if you're struggling with your sleep, you've tried all of those things, right? We're not dumb. We have the internet. We have a problem, we Google how to solve it, and we try the first 5 or 10 things that we see on there. And maybe it works, but probably it doesn't. And that's really frustrating and can lead into the really unfortunate spiral of sleep anxiety, right? You're not getting enough sleep, you worry about getting sleep, you get less sleep. The word insomnia is battered about everywhere nowadays, and it's kind of a problem because it has a clinical meaning that's really pretty severe. I would say unhelpfully severe. Depending on who you ask, the clinical definition of insomnia is that you struggle to get asleep, stay asleep, or get good quality sleep 3 nights a week, at least, for at least 3 months. That is a lot of missed sleep. If I get 1 or 2 nights in a row of suboptimal sleep, I am not my best self, and I'm going to be complaining to anyone and everyone. I'm going to be looking to get that rectified ASAP. But often to get clinical help beyond the home remedies that you find yourself on Google, you need to meet something like that clinical definition. And while people suffering under that clinical definition are truly suffering, that excludes a lot of us that need help with our sleep, but don't have it quite badly enough to meet that clinical definition. So in this video today, I'm not going to be sharing those standard tips that you can Google for yourselves, because you can Google them for yourselves, and you probably already have. I want to talk about sleep and insomnia more generally, with the overarching goal of hopefully lessening your sleep anxiety and giving you some avenues to explore that you might not have yet. So I've mentioned the current Googleable treatments that are supposed to work and might work, but if you're here, probably haven't worked. But just in case you haven't tried these, it is worth making sure that you've taken a look at your sleep hygiene, your sleep environment, make sure your room is dark, cold, quiet, maybe with white noise, avoid screen time before bed, consider meditation, relaxation techniques, breath work. But let's say that you've tried all that and you're still struggling. What can we do? Well, the current modern gold standard treatment for insomnia uses cognitive behavioral therapy. You might have heard of CBT for treating other conditions like anxiety, OCD, or depression, but this really powerful technique can also be used for those of us with sleep issues. Roughly speaking, cognitive behavioral therapy trains you to spot patterns of thinking that are not helping you interrupt them, and replace them with a more helpful internal narrative. How to apply this towards your own internal attitudes towards sleep is way beyond my pay grade, but this is a whole topic that is worth Googling in its own right. There are lots of resources out there that I'd encourage you to check out, whether on your own or working with a qualified therapist. Other options include light therapy, trying to reset your body's circadian clock by exposing it to bright light in the morning. And there's also wearable sleep tech that goes beyond just an Apple Watch, that can involve some sort of biofeedback back into your body and brain to help regulate your sleep cycles. You can also speak to your doctor about getting some sort of pharmaceutical intervention, but this will generally be a short-term treatment and not a long-term fix. Another treatment that I find really interesting is the idea of sleep restriction therapy. That sounds kind of counterintuitive, right? You're trying to get more sleep, but the therapy is going to restrict the amount of sleep that you get. This should only be done under the supervision of a trained professional, but the idea is, say you're lying in bed for 8 hours a night, but you're only getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep. Well, we're going to restrict the time window in which we allow your body to get that amount of sleep. Instead of lying there for 8 hours, we're only going to let your body lie there for 5 or 6 hours. After a string of nights of this, your body starts to kind of ping back and realize, oh, I am not getting enough sleep. I better go to sleep in this time window. To me, there are certain parallels with intermittent fasting or time-restricted feeding. If you're only allowing yourself to eat food in a 4-hour time window each day, you're gonna have to eat a lot more food in that window to make sure that you're getting your calories. It's not really the same thing at all, but I find it helpful to think about this sleep restriction therapy in a similar sort of way. Your body is wanting a certain amount of sleep and you're only giving it a smaller window to get that sleep. So it's going to tighten things up as much as possible and make sure it gets the sleep that it needs and wants in that smaller window. The goal is to eventually have you be sleeping for 8 hours a night, not the mere 5 or 6 that your body was giving you before. As you find that you're sleeping for more and more of that 5-hour window, you set your sleep schedule to have a slightly longer window, and the hope is that your body keeps going and fills up that sleep window with actual sleep. Again, you don't want to be experimenting with this by yourself. You should definitely be working with a trained professional. But I think it's a really interesting idea and something that is potentially a lot more impactful than, say, investing in another $10 white noise machine. So we've talked about things that are supposed to work, but maybe don't work that well for you. Let's cover some things that absolutely don't work and you shouldn't rely on for sleep, and will just make your sleep situation worse. As tempting as it is to rely on sedatives like sleeping pills or alcohol, unless your doctor has prescribed them, and I don't think they're prescribing you alcohol, be really careful here. They really interrupt the biological process of your sleep. And although on paper it looks like you're getting eyes shut, head on pillow time, what you're doing is actually quite different from sleep, and it's not nearly as restorative for your body and mind. So, underline, don't rely on alcohol or sedatives to trick your body into unconsciousness. Speaking to myself and anyone else who will listen, don't obsess over sleep trackers. There are so many options out there nowadays, from smart alarm clocks to things you can wear to apps on your phone. They can be really useful, especially if you're trying to get a handle on what's going on and communicate it to your doctor, but don't obsess over that data and don't trust that data too much. A lot of the things that these devices and apps are reporting back to you can only really be reliably measured in a sleep lab, with your brain and body hooked up to lots of different medical grade devices. All that is to say, keep these trackers and the data they provide in context. Don't let them freak you out and give you more sleep anxiety. Also, don't toss and turn indefinitely in bed when you're struggling to sleep. That starts to teach your body that your bed is somewhere that you don't sleep. But it definitely is. So you want to unlearn that as soon as possible. So if you find that you're lying there unable to sleep, it's counterintuitive, it might even feel counterproductive, but get up, go and do something else. Maybe read, make yourself a warm drink, come back to bed and try again later. That can be really frustrating when it's night 6 and all you want to do is sleep, but you start to get to the point where you need to shake your body out of that habit of tossing and turning rather than sleeping. Insomnia is probably something that people have been struggling with as long as we've been sleeping. So that is to say, forever. There are lots of cures from history that were not cures, and we shouldn't be tricked into trying them by a viral TikTok. Hard drugs like opium and laudanum Knocking yourself out is not the same as sleep. See my note earlier about alcohol and sleeping pills. Bloodletting is also a tried and failed treatment for just about any ailment that humanity has suffered over the centuries. It has been tried for insomnia also. I would encourage you to not try it. It does not work for insomnia, unless you lose so much blood that you, again, pass out artificially. Let's not try that, guys. A really novel, slightly more modern idea was the idea of electrotherapy, in that shocking your brain might help it reset its sleep cycles. This one's a little bit more tempting because there are genuine modern uses for electrotherapy, but insomnia is not one of them. Sorry. So, I'm not sure why I'm saying sorry. I hate to break it to you, don't shock yourself. Don't shock yourself ever. Electrotherapy should only be done under the watchful supervision and person in charge being a physician, please. This one sounds real fun. Drinking a warm beer before bed doesn't work, but people throughout history have tried it and thought it helped. Again, alcohol is a sedative. A nice warm beer in your belly might sound quite tempting, but it's not doing anything for your insomnia. After food, water, and air, sleep is basically the most fundamental human need. If you're not getting enough of it, your body's gonna let you know pretty quickly, and that sucks. My intention with this video is not to magically cure your insomnia, because we all know that's unfortunately not possible. But what I wanted to convey to you is that you're not alone in this, and you should have hope that things can be better and keep trying. There are a ton of ways out there to improve your sleep outlook, whether on your own or working with a professional. It doesn't have to be something that you struggle through interminably, and there are people out there who want to help you. If it's 2 a.m. where you happen to be right now and you're not waiting up for a sleep restriction therapy window to begin, please, I'd encourage you to say goodnight, start your wind down routine, try to give yourself the rest that you deserve, and I'll see you in the morning. So sorry if you're doom scrolling YouTube to avoid some task that you're doing your very best to put off and you've ended up here with me. Because today I'd love to talk to you about procrastination. What it is, why we do it, what works to combat it, what doesn't, and when it can be a sign of something more concerning. Some of this is definitely a bitter pill to swallow, especially if you're like me, a chronic Excelsior Plus procrastinator. If I'll do it later was an Olympic sport, I'd be a guy carrying his team's country flag in the opening ceremony that you never see again. But maybe you and me can convince ourselves that we're actually doing some deep dive research on self-optimization techniques that involve kicking ourselves into gear and getting a load of stuff done. Which doesn't sound quite as bad, at least to me. So let's get to it. First of all, what is procrastination exactly? Well, there are a few formal definitions, and they all roughly boil down to the same idea. It's typically the act of delaying or postponing tasks, despite knowing that there are probably going to be negative consequences. Often it's wrapped up in not feeling like doing the task right now, and falsely believing that you'll definitely feel like it later, eventually. Hi. But of course that rarely happens. So the thing just never gets done until it smashes against something like a deadline or a consequence. Hi. But we all know procrastination isn't just about putting something off, it's about doing something else instead. Now my eyes just lit up a little bit there, and it's because I am really good at finding something else to do instead of the thing I'm supposed to be doing. It's really fun. That can be watching seemingly endless YouTube videos for hours instead of studying for an exam. Or rewriting your to-do list for the 5th time, or hunting for that perfect to-do list app, instead of actually just getting started with the to-do list. If this is not sounding familiar to you, then
I hate your guts and you should leave right now.
Kidding. Just kidding. I promise, you're probably great. But it sounds like you might not be as familiar with this most crunchy part of the human condition, procrastination. And that's okay, but just know, we do hate you a little bit. Now that they've left, let's talk about why we do this to ourselves. First of all, procrastination isn't about having some intrinsic laziness. For most people, it's about how our brains handle discomfort. Our brains usually want to avoid stress or boredom or failure, whether as a survival mechanism, energy conservation, or ego protection. So instead of doing the hard thing, often we look for that quick candy hit of dopamine fun. Scrolling your social media feeds, playing video games, suddenly deciding to organize your underwear drawer. Listen, there is a perfect system, I just haven't found it yet. We also look for instant gratification, right? Future you is totally gonna handle it for you. Spoiler alert, future you is actually going to be really mad at you and punish you in the way that only they can. Think finishing the milk for your cereal tomorrow. You can also totally be trying your best to get stuff done, but just have too much to do and get hit with decision fatigue. Usually, too many choices means no action. Maybe not when your day's starting out at 9 a.m, but by lunchtime, sure. Have you ever sat down towards the end of the day to start a task and just been magnetically repelled by it? It's not because you suck, it's just because you're kind of totally done. Or fix und fertig, as we would say in German. Another procrastination driver, which on the face of it sounds like quite a good thing, is perfectionism. The need to do everything A+, 10 out of 10 flawlessly. But we can't ever really achieve perfection, right? And if something can't be perfect, why even start? This is something that I've slowly been coming to realize I struggle with, which was news to me and those close to me in my life, because I'm usually aiming for a solid B+ effort on most things. But what I've realized is that there's actually a hidden A+ desire, hidden very deep. That's actually quite intimidating. And so if I can't get that A+, why would I even try? Let's go for a B+. So not only am I sort of procrastinating on things that I really should be doing, I'm also kind of underperforming in a lot of ways, which was kind of a harsh blow to realize. This may be an overshare. I promise I won't edit it out.
Emmy, I promise.
Okay, so that's a lot, but we're not doomed, I promise. Some of history's most lauded contributors to science and culture were chronic procrastinators just like us. Here are some pretty hilarious examples. Mozart basically wrote the score for an entire opera the night before the opening performance. That is hilarious. Legit, an all-nighter for an opera. Mozart, what are you like? Leonardo da Vinci, non-stop putter offer. He would start projects and not come back to them for years. Do you know how long it took him to finish the Mona Lisa? 16 years by some accounts. And have you seen it in person? It's kind of a small painting. Leo, what are you doing to yourself? Douglas Adams, author of Hitchhiker's Guide, once missed so many deadlines on a book that his publisher, and I hope good trustworthy friend, had to lock him in a hotel room to get him to finish the book. My point is, we basically all have this procrastination problem to some extent. So what can we do about it? First, let's debunk some common solutions that definitely don't work. Shame definitely doesn't work. Saying I'm such a lazy failure to yourself isn't motivating anyone, and typically it just makes the situation worse.
Hi.
Speaking of motivation, right? Motivation is fickle. You can't rely on it. It arrives late, it leaves early, it ghosts you just when you think you can start relying on it. I know there's a joke here.
I'll figure out that punchline later, Emmy.
Keeping track of all your to-dos is probably a good idea, but when that list grows too long, when there are 27 items on it, it can actually just start to feel overwhelming and become counterproductive. And the classic, let's just power through and get things done, doesn't really work that well. If it did, we wouldn't really be here having this conversation, right? We have willpower. We have the drive to get these things done. It just doesn't quite work out for us. If it were possible to just grab on and push through, we would do that, right? Just sucking it up isn't a viable option in the long run, and typically we'll just burn out. We need to find an approach that is kinder to ourselves and more understanding of the actual problem. What does help when you're paralyzed with procrastination? Well, finding just that very first small step that you can do on a task, even just for 5 minutes, is a great start. Either it's not as bad as you thought, that's usually what happens, and yay, you've got started. Or yeah, sure, less likely the task might suck, but you've at least started and built some progress and you've got some momentum that you can keep carrying forward. Something I'm using right now to combat my perfectionism is the idea of the ugly first draft. Just saying, this first attempt that I make is supposed to be bad. I'm aiming for it to be bad. I'm getting some ideas down. I'm making some progress. It's not realistic to think I can just throw away my perfectionist tendencies, but I can make the rules of the game different. I can make it so the first attempt should be bad. That gets me started, allows me to be a bit kinder to myself. Habit stacking is typically something that we do when we're trying to build a new habit. Well, I've got news for you. The habit we're trying to build right now is getting stuff done. So take something that you already reliably do and hopefully like to do, like having a morning coffee, and stack on one more task after that, like saying, hey, I'm gonna answer 5 emails while I have that first cup of coffee. If you have someone in your life that you could use as an accountability buddy, that's great, but it's important that it's someone who won't give you any judgment or nagging. That would be really counterproductive. Ultimately, you're looking for someone that you can check in with, who might check in with you and see, hey, what's up? What's happening? How are things going? Just feeling that you have a friendly person in your corner that you do have to vocalize progress to can be really helpful in terms of getting stuff moving along. By now, right, I've said this several times, procrastination is pretty normal. We all experience it at least a little bit. That being said, there are some instances where it can be a little bit more concerning and indicate that there's something else worth looking at as well. If you're constantly missing important deadlines, or relationships in your life are starting to suffer, or you're often feeling anxious, depressed, or stuck, that can be an indication that it's not just procrastination, but that your procrastination is actually a symptom of something else that you might want to work on, maybe with a professional. It could be something like ADHD, anxiety, depression, executive dysfunction. For those sorts of things, sometimes self-help strategies aren't enough. It's worth reaching out. Maybe that non-procrastinating person that I told to leave came back because they realized that they know someone in their life who is a procrastinator. Because even if we ourselves don't have the problem, we definitely live 2 squares away from someone who does. It can be really easy to identify problems in others that we perhaps don't see in ourselves. But the same strategies that I mentioned previously are great here too. In particular, I'd highlight what not to do, right? We don't want to shame, nag, or guilt those close to us when it looks like they're procrastinating. What can be helpful? Well, offering to help break down a task into manageable chunks, offering gentle, compassionate nudges towards action, not pressure. Asking, have you thought about an easy first step you might take? Instead of,
Why haven't you started yet, Neil?
on a related note, it can be quite different procrastinating in your personal life versus doing so at work or at school. Often there are harsher, stricter deadlines or consequences in those situations, but sometimes those still aren't enough to get you moving. So what can you do? You can fake or plan for earlier due dates on tasks that are strictly necessary. Tell yourself the project or the exam is due 2 days earlier than it actually is. Now, this only works if you actually buy into that, but buy into it. It works. Speaking of deadlines, whether they're real or fake, make them public. Whether to a colleague, a manager, a classmate, it goes back to the idea of accountability, baking into the structure a little bit of social pressure to get you moving. Lastly, it can be helpful to work in blocks or sprints, right? Don't focus on the whole task. Oh my God, so much cat hair. Don't focus on the whole, this is so much hair, Emmy. Don't focus on, I'm sorry, don't leave. Don't focus on the whole task, break it up into small chunks, right? Don't worry about the whole paper you have to write. Say I'm gonna write my first paragraph, my introduction, my conclusion, something like that. Okay, so I've been talking at you for quite a while. I can no longer hold you back from whatever task you've been putting off. Nice try. I can't myself procrastinate anymore from ending this video and actually having to edit all of this footage together. But let's just remember, the hardest part of any task is starting. No, actually, that's not true. Often the hardest part is finishing. So if you're procrastinating right now, this is your sign. Hit pause, minimize the window, get started on just what it is you need to be doing right now. Even if it's just for 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute, it probably won't be as bad as you're thinking. And if it is, I'll still be here. Come back. I've got lots more videos. I think that's probably